Well, welcome everyone to our episode 22 of our 30 minutes of robotic milking. My name is Jim Sulfur. I'm a little different host than you may be used to seeing if you are regular listeners. Marcia Andrus is right now, and so I typically co-host with her, but she usually takes a lead. I'm not sure where Marcia is right now, but let's go through a few housekeeping items first that many of you probably know already. Episodes again are held on every third Thursday of every month at 11:30 a.m. Central U.S. time. Right on the screen, if you're watching this and it's recorded, here's how you register it. If you register, you will automatically get reminders a week ahead of time and also a day ahead of time of the webinars, and also, of course, they're all recorded and moved to YouTube. If you want to ask questions, and we encourage you, please, to do that, put them in the Q&A box if you can. It's just easier for us to monitor the Q&A box. If you use the chat box, we'll catch them, but it's a lot easier. That should be on the bottom of your screen if you kind of hover over with the mouse. And then we'll read your questions when we kind of get done with that. So with that, we'll move on to our farmer. Today we have Paul, and he's from Minnesota. And so this is a picture of Paul and his family. So with that, I'll mute myself. I'll turn off my mic and turn it over to Paul. Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm Paul. I'm from Nicollet, Minnesota. Our farm name is Forest Lawn Holsteins. We've been in the registered Holstein business for well over 125 years. We got our first registered Holsteins in 1885 and have been at it ever since. I'm the 5th generation on our farm. Our daughter Ashley, as you can see in the picture, is the 6th generation on our farm. My wife Cindy and I, and our daughter Ashley and her husband David are in the picture, and we all work together here. Ashley's got her own embryo transfer veterinarian business, and David does a lot of crop farming as a separate enterprise, but he helps us quite a bit here also. Our robotic milking business started in 2013, 9 years ago. We put in, here's a picture of our addition on the barn. We added on to an existing freestall barn. We put a new milk room on, and right in the middle of this picture, you can see the white walls that are poured concrete walls. That's the robots are in 2 in each of those rooms for a total of 4 robotic milkers. They're Lely A4s. Like I said, we put them in 2013. We added this on and put the robots in, a new bulk tank in, and a few more freestalls. So we had 186 freestalls when we were done building, and we ran 240 cows in 186 freestalls pretty consistently, and production went along quite well. But we knew we were overcrowded. A year ago, we added on, here's a picture of the robot room itself with the 2 robots. There's an identical room across the hallway. And we added on 50 more stalls last year. Here's the robotic pusher and the cow brushes. And so we have head-to-head stalls. This other picture is the far end of the barn that we added last year. We added 50 additional stalls on. The stalls are head-to-head. They're sand bedded, which we just added last year. And by adding the extra 50 stalls a year ago, our somatic cell count went from in the 175,000 range down to between 75 and 100. It really made a difference. We were bedding with lime and mattresses. And we tore the mattresses and the concrete out and went to all deep bedded sand. Our hoof trimmer has seen probably the biggest improvement by going to the sand and the deep beds. We've got way less sore feet, but not just from the sand, possibly also from having more space in the barn. Probably helped the cows having more time to lay down. Our components went up about 1/10 on protein and 2/10 on butter fat. Our milk went up just a pound or 2, but our components and milk together added quite a bit to the milk check, and then reduced feed problems. We're thinking that in 10 years time, the additional income and the cost savings on the feed will pay for the 50 stall addition and the new concrete bottom lagoon that we dug in 2021. It seems like a very reasonable investment for us to get our payback in 10 years and also have healthier cows. We've got, as you can see in the picture, we've got tunnel ventilation. We've got 12 big fans on the end. We can keep about a 7-mile-an-hour breeze going through at all times in the summer. It keeps it really reasonable in the barn. We've never sprayed a fly in our barn since we put the tunnel ventilation in, actually in 2012. And there just isn't any flies in there with that much wind. Other than that, a few other things we have, now that we added the 50 extra stalls, we've taken the herd from 240 milking to 270. We're currently milking 270 cows and 50 dry cows for a total of 320 on a 4-robot barn. We've been running between 91 and 93 pounds of milk with a 3.8 and 3.2% for fat and protein. It gives us between 6 1/3 and 6.5 pounds of combined fat protein in the truck every day. We're currently shipping between 49 and 50,000 pounds of milk every 2 days on the milk truck, which 50,000 pounds our co-op considers that a semi-load. That's where you're going to get the best price. And that's what our goal is with adding the addition we're putting this year on for more room for the dry cows inside. I'll get to that in a minute, but our goal is to get 50,000 pounds every other day in the truck. That's going to get us the best hauling rates at our co-op, and that'll give us 1.25 million pounds from each robot, or 9 million pounds a year out of the 4 robots. The other day, our highest robot had 6,756 pounds through. That's about the highest I've seen for 24 hours. The downtime or free time on the robots with this many cows in the barn, a lot of days it's 6, 7, 8%. It's generally in single digits. This is a great way to run robots until you have a breakdown, and then it does take a little while to recover if you have anything major go wrong. But we've been having a goal to get to 50,000 pounds in the truck every 2 days, and I think we're just about successful at getting there now. Our newest addition that we're putting on in 2022, I think Jim has a picture. The next one may be on the opposite end of the barn. We tore down an open front heifer shed we have, and we're putting on 40 more sand bedded freestalls and a bedded pack. Here's a picture of what we added on. It's 100 feet long to the west end of the robots. It'll be the opposite end of where the milking freestalls are. And so we're going to bring the dry cows from being in an open front shed and calving in the retrofitted old tie stall barn to all being under one roof with the tunnel ventilation. We're going to take the extreme weather away in Minnesota, where we won't be drying up cows in a semi-warm barn with the robots and dumping them outside into really extreme cold. And the other thing, in the summer, we'll have tunnel ventilation without any flies and not the extreme heat also that they had outside, with just a pole shed and an open lot in front. I guess we're thinking that a couple pounds of milk would probably be a reasonable expectation by bringing them in here. We'll have the ability to feed under a roof, so we won't have the rain on the feed and the snow mix in the feed. We feed an anionic salt diet, and when that gets wet, the cows absolutely do not like to eat it. So by having that under a roof, I think we're going to get more consistent dry matter intake, especially in the pre-fresh group. And I believe that will probably bring us enough extra milk to pay for this addition over a few years also. With the barn being that full, we're still averaging 2.8 milkings per cow per day. And when we were at 240 cows, we were getting 3.0 milkings per cow per day. Our fetch cows are on an average day, we'll fetch the heifers that are probably a week fresh or less, and maybe 5 more cows in the morning and the evenings is about all the cows we fetch. I've never fetched cows very hard after about the first year. The first year we had the robots, I fetched kind of what the Lely people told us to fetch. And to me, it defeated the purpose of having the robots if I was going to spend a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours at night chasing fetch cows. And the more cows I fetched, it seemed like the more cows I had to fetch. So I don't fetch cows very close. If I have cows that are out 200 days plus in milk, and they only milk every 13 hours, 14 hours, something like that, a lot of them, I'm just going to let them do that, as to spend all my time fetching cows. It seems like they learn the habit pretty quick when you start fetching them. When we get cows, when we're this full, if we get cows out 300 plus days, and even if they have 30 days left before they need to be dried up, if they start getting a little lazy, not coming in, they just go in the dry cow pen and we put a fresh cow in. And that way we get way more milk in the trucking down the road every year. We do end up probably feeding an extra 10 cows maybe in the dry cow lot than what some people would. I know on a 4 robot barn to carry 50 dry cows is probably a few too many for what some people would consider. We grow all our own homegrown feed. Our dry cows are eating corn silage and straw, which is a reasonable price feed. There's no such thing as cheap feed, but I think I can feed silage and straw to 10 extra dry cows and have 10 extra fresh cows in my barn and be money ahead at the end of the day. That's kind of my way of thought on that. That pretty much covers most of what we have. We have a few brown Swiss and a few Ayrshires. That brown Swiss are my daughter's 4-H project. The Ayrshires are my son-in-law's his kind of project that's in here. Nothing can match our Holsteins when it comes to dollars and cents in the barn. And the one thing I would say about the brown Swiss, if you have robots and a whole herd of brown Swiss, you're going to fix robots a whole lot more than you would if you have a different breed. Brown Swiss like to be really rough on their robots. And we have 3 different cow families in our brown Swiss herd, and it doesn't seem to be family orientated. It's more just the brown Swiss thing. And they love to go in their robots, but they also love to stomp on them. And not every one of them, but more on a percentage basis, way more than the Holsteins or the Ayrshires. But we currently have 15 brown Swiss and 5 Ayrshires and 300 Holsteins in the barn. I guess a few other ideas I would have just to lay out there for you of if you're going to go to a robotic facility, I would highly recommend putting the dry cows in. That has been on my thought process for quite a few years. It just didn't quite fit the economics as we ran through the 2016, 17, 18 milk prices to do it. If I was building a new facility, I'd be very tempted to put, if I had all new, to put a dry cow facility right in with my milking facilities. I guess that and the sand bedding. That's the question that goes round and round in the dairy industry. We proved to ourselves that in the last 12 months that we can't, you can't beat the sand bedding. We had sand bedded freestall barn before we put the robots in and went away from it. And we honestly couldn't wait to get back to it. We had to dig a new lagoon. We went from a daily haul when we had the sand in before, and just a small pit for the feed alleys and the runoff from the parlor and the milkers. And now we dug a concrete bottom lagoon and went to all sand. Smeg cells down, production's up, cow health is better. If you don't have access to sand, I understand that it doesn't fit for everyone, but it's just the gold standard for the cow health. That's pretty much what I have. if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer anybody's questions they might have.
So now, as a reminder, just make sure you type in your questions. There's a couple coming in, and of course, I always have a number of questions. So I've got a question here. How are pre-fresh heifers fed and introduced to the robot? So you want to talk about kind of your training practices for your pre-fresh heifers?
Our pre-fresh heifers are with our dry cows and then they're in the pre-fresh group with the dry cows, and they never see a robot until they drop a calf. And we put them in there, a few hours after they've calved. They really don't cause very much problem. We have a heifer here or there that we have to push and shove some to get in there the first time, but most of them really don't have much of a problem. Once we get a heifer in there and milked, 1 or 2 milkings of having a person alongside of her. And after that, we just get them behind the robot in a fetch pen and make sure they get guided in there. And generally they go. Usually the first milking is easier than the second milking because the brushes don't brush the teats on the first milking. When the brushes hit their teats for the first time on the second milking is usually when they jump around the most. But it's really not an issue that we've had. It seems like they love to get in and eat the robot pellets by about the second or third milking already. Most of the heifers we fetch morning and night for, I'd say, about a week on average. And after that, most of them will be going on their own. My heifers, when we calve them out, we put them in, I fetch them morning and night. And usually by, like I said, in a week's time, you'll come in the morning and they'll be empty. And they kind of get in the routine of going through about 6 in the morning and 5 at night. And if I come at 6 in the morning and walk through the barn to check on the fresh heifers, like I said, after a week or so, most of them have been through, or else they're standing next to the robot waiting to go in. And after that, we just let them go. I think we could get more milk if we fetched our heifers 3 times a day. That's another issue I have. If we were a bigger dairy and had more help, we probably could push the production on those heifers a little higher by running them 3 times a day. There's not a lot of help around here. We run on a pretty small labor force. So generally from about 6:30 at night until about 5:30 in the morning, there's nobody in the barn unless the phone rings and we have to go address something, other than watching the calving pens. I got cameras in the calving pens, but other than that, we fetch them twice. If you have the labor or a small enough herd that you would be able to just run in there and do it, fetching the heifers 3 times would probably be an advantage.
Okay, and we got another question here. Did your robot, this is a really good question from somebody that switched back and forth. Did your operation costs, I think mostly repair costs, go up a lot, or did they change when you went from mattresses to sand?
No, it hasn't changed a thing. We had lime on top of the mattresses, and that dusty lime got into everything. I think that did as much wear and tear on everything as the sand did. I wouldn't not buy sand. I would not switch to sand because of cost on the robot. I think it'd be an immaterial part of the equation. The advantages of sand are drastically more than the cost of the sand on the robot. Yep, I don't think we spent any more. Maybe one more set of ropes underneath in a year, but that's trivial amount of money for changing the ropes. Yep.
So you didn't go to chains, because I know Lely makes some chains.
We have the chains on the bottom and just the short piece of rope on the back.
Okay, so underneath there. Okay.
But we've had the chains on since they were new.
Okay, maybe that's standard now.
Yep.
Another question is, how many different feeds are you providing through your robots? And then what are you feeding? So talk a little bit about amounts of robot pellets and
Okay.
what kind of around that whole feeding thing, because you get awful good production.
We're feeding a really pretty simple diet. We're feeding one pellet and that's all we have, just one feed in the robot. We were feeding two. We were feeding a high fat product and things. We decided when fat got so expensive a couple years ago, we decided to discontinue that, and we're just feeding it's a Cargill pellet. I can't say that it's any different than a Purina pellet or a Big Game pellet. It's just a nice hard pellet that we get from Cargill, and it's a 16% protein. It's got a lot of wheat mids in it to hold it together really good. It's they call it a mini pellet, so it's not a real big pellet. And that actually feeds through better, we think, than what the larger pellets did. They had more crumbles in the larger pellets. We average about 12 to 13 pounds of pellets a cow a day. Our high cows get right at 20. And for the first, about the first 100 days, most of them, well, as their production ramps up and they get that high, they're going to be on that 20 pounds, at least for 100 days. And then it's all, after 100 days, is all based on milk. But we average 12 or 13 pounds a day of the robot pellets. And there is cheaper ways to feed, but I think the cows eat a pellet the best in the robot and probably give the most milk.
Okay. Another question. I don't know if you can see these, Paul, but is there any hired help? You want to talk about your labor? Because you had mentioned you run kind of a streamlined operation here. So talk about your labor force and how that works.
Yeah. Oh, our labor force, we've got basically right now, we've got David's here part of the time when he's not up north on their farm, grain farming and gone doing other things. But otherwise, my wife Cindy takes care of all the calves and most of the field work, and I take care of fetching cows in the mornings and doing quite a bit of the feeding. And we've got one guy that works basically a 40-hour week. He comes in at 6:30 in the morning, leaves about 3:30 in the afternoon, 5 days a week, and does a little bit on the weekends. And we've got another guy that's both the guys help us farm on the side besides. The other fellow, he's about 50 years old. He comes in about 8 o'clock in the morning, washes up all the milkers, does a little repairs on this and that. And then he comes in the evening and does the same thing. He washes up the milkers and he'll help me in the afternoon fetch cows. And that's pretty much what it is. We run about between 700 and 800 acres. Cindy does the majority of the tractor driving, and then we hire most of our harvesting done. We harvest our own hay, but we hire our combining done and our silage shopping done. Otherwise, we do all our planting and tillage and everything.
So when you talked about that labor force, that includes the cropping and all the young stock?
The cropping and most of the young stock. We've got our older heifers are on a different farm, and they go over there when they're ready to breed, and they come back about 2 months before they calve. So they're gone for 7 or 8 months. So that group of heifers isn't here, but we've got just about 500 head of cattle and on the farm here, and then between 700 and 800 acres that we run, and that's our labor force.
Okay, good. Are you still overcrowded? I think I did the math. It looks like maybe 65 to 70 cows, or maybe a little more than 65 cows per robot. Do you think you have better production per cow with 1 cow per stall? Or have you tried? Do you lose too much more milk? So kind of this, again, you're unique and you have experience with different levels of overcrowding and also different amount of cows per robot. Just want to talk about what you think is ideal for your farm.
Yeah, we're thinking 260 is kind of the sweet spot maybe for maximizing the production per cow. We've been running a little bit more than that and actually getting more milk in the tank. I think if we would go back to 240 or 250, we could maybe have a 95 or better average. When we were at 240, we never hit 100 pound a day average. We'd hit 95 or 96. But with feeding our own homegrown feed, it seems like maximizing the robots to this extent is giving us the biggest return on our investment. And I wouldn't argue with the fact that if you had 20 less cows in the barn, our production per cow probably would be a little higher. I don't think that would make us more money than having this much production going out the door. And one other thing I've been doing the last year, with all the talk in the dairy industry about a lot of co-ops and creameries putting a base production on, we wanted to make sure we have enough base that if we have to stay the same or cut back 5 or 10%, that we can still run our robots full. And that's one of the reasons we've been pushing hard the last 12 to 18 months, trying to have a big enough base that we don't have to worry about not having a full barn if we ever had to do something like that.
So Paul, do you think that affect your fetch numbers when because you've played around a little bit with these cow numbers? Do you think you have more fetch cows when you run those numbers higher, or do you think they kind of more fetch heifers?
I think the fetching has got way more to do with what you have in your feed manger than how many cows you have, to a certain extent. But we don't fetch very many cows on. I've got all the heifers on one side and part of the 3-year-olds and all the older cows on the other side. And this morning I fetched 2 cows on, I had 134 cows, I believe, on the 2 robots on the south side with the older cows. I fetched 2 cows out of 134 on 2 robots. You can't get any better than that. I mean, and
That's pretty amazing.
Of those 2 cows, I fetched, one's on fetch only because their back teats are too close together that I have to help on. And one cow was about a 200-day or more milk cow that's just getting a little lazy. Those were the only 2 cows I fetched. I think the most important thing is keep your cows hungry enough at the bunk that they want to get to the robot and eat the pellets if you're going to have a barn this full.
Okay, next question. I'll add a little bit to it. Discuss your repro program. Are you on any kind of synchronization program? Do you just use tags? And along with that, I think you're a little unique because you've got kind of a partner that's a veterinarian, kind of the milk quality. So the things that veterinarians are really good at. So first reproduction, and then maybe how you manage milk quality, because you've got an awful low somatic cell count.
Okay, on repro, since we put the robots in and the collars for reproduction, we've totally gone away from any repro program at all, other than, you know, a cow here, a cow there that gets late, we'll synchronize some, and then we put in a reasonable amount of embryos every year, and then we have to utilize a group of cows to get them set up on timing for putting the embryos in. But the vast majority of our cows show up on the list on the computer from their heat detection on the monitors on their neck. And if they're in heat, they hardly ever miss one. And that's pretty much been our whole program. And so our amount of drug use for repro is very, very small.
Okay, and then we do have a question here. Are your milk access tables different between heifers and older cows?
Not really. Our access tables are, they have to be at least 5 hours. They have to be 22 pounds, I believe, of milk in their udder for both cows and heifers, but not for, I'd have to look this up, but I don't know exactly. But in the ramp up stage, there's not, they don't have the 22 pounds in there. But no, we don't really have different access tables for the cows or the heifers, but it's pretty much on time in the beginning, and then after that, then I know it's at 22 pounds on the mainstream group after they've been in there. I forget the days, but after it's been in there a month or so, I think. Yep. And milk quality, you mentioned about milk quality. I guess we so far we've been dry treating anything. We've been considering, when we get all sand bedded dry cows, of possibly stopping dry treating, but we have been dry treating them at dry off. We use Endovac bovi religiously We don't use an E. coli vaccine as such, but we do use the Endovac bovine and I can't remember the name of it. It's Klebsiella. We use a Klebsiella vaccine. Our biggest problem we have with mastitis is Klebsiella, and when we get it with all the vaccine we have in them, if a cow gets it, it's not a good situation. But we don't get very many, and we don't get very few E. coli's. And I would say the amount of mastitis we treat in a year would be not very many, a cow or two a month. And but then once in a while we'll get a little bit of Klebsiella come in, and sometimes he'll just knock a couple cows out right on the spot. And we've had that in our herd for a long time, and that's what we vaccinate the hardest on. But we've went away from like the J5s and went to the Endovac bovine in combination, and that seems to be working between that and the Klebsiella vaccine.
Okay, well, we're right at a half hour here, so I'll kind of sign off. And if anybody has any questions, of course, feel free to type them in. We'll stay a little bit. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Again, if you haven't, go to the beginning of the slides and sign up if you're watching this via your video and you'd like to sign up. I'd sure like to thank Paul. I think that was really interesting. And of course, all the attendees. I think you've tried a lot of different things. So I think that really adds a lot of value to the discussion with different numbers of cows, different numbers of cows per robot. So with that, I think we'll sign off. Sherry, if you want to stop the recording, that'd be good.